When does almost stop hurting? The Oilers' agonizing pattern of squandered leads. What does it feel like to watch your team bleed out a victory in slow motion, night after night, knowing exactly what's coming but being powerless to stop it? If you're an Edmonton Oilers fan right now, you don't need to imagine. You're living that nightmare on repeat, and Thursday's 2-1 overtime loss to the Tampa Bay Lightning was just the latest cruel chapter in this season's book of preventable heartbreak. The Oilers walked into the Benchmark International Arena as it's now branded, and did something they've barely managed all season. They scored first. Not just first, but fast. Trent Frederic buried one past Andrei Vasilevsky just 92 seconds into the opening frame, assisted by Leon Draisaitl, giving Edmonton their quickest goal of the entire 2024-25 campaign. For a franchise that has fallen behind 2-0 in 9 of their last 18 games and surrendered the first goal in 13 of 19 contests, this felt like a revelation. Finally, the Oilers were dictating terms instead of playing catch-up hockey. But here's the thing about hope in hockey. It's the most dangerous emotion when your team hasn't learned how to protect a lead. The Oilers held that 1-0 advantage for nearly 56 excruciating minutes, Calvin Pickard standing on his head in the Edmonton crease, turning aside shot after shot from a Lightning squad that outshot the visitors 35-25 on the night. Pickard stopped the first 32 attempts he faced, delivering what might be his finest performance of the season. A stark contrast to Stuart Skinner's forgettable outing the previous evening in Washington, where he surrendered 5 goals on 19 shots. Yet despite Pickard's heroics, despite the early goal, despite Darnell Nurse dropping the gloves with the towering Curtis Douglas in a spirited defense of teammate Jake Wallman, the Oilers found a way to let victory slip through their fingers once again. Nick Paul tied the game with a rocket with just 2:32 remaining in regulation, and Jake Gensel ended it 1:43 into overtime after Vasilevsky robbed Jack Roslovic on a glorious chance moments earlier. 3 consecutive losses, a 9-9-5 record, 23 points, tied with the San Jose Sharks for 5th place in the Pacific Division. These aren't the numbers of a Stanley Cup finalist from 5 months ago. These are the statistics of a team in crisis, a squad that has forgotten the fundamental principle that separated them from pretenders last spring, the ability to finish what they start. The closing problem that's really an identity problem. Let's cut through the noise and address the elephant in the room. The Edmonton Oilers have a finishing problem that borders on pathological. Their 55.6% win percentage when leading after 40 minutes ranks 3rd worst in the entire National Hockey League. Read that again. When this team has a lead heading into the final period, they win barely more than half the time. In their last 7 games, where they've held an advantage in the 2nd or 3rd period, they've squandered that lead every single time, either losing in regulation or limping into overtime. These numbers aren't just bad, they're almost statistically impossible for a team with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on the roster. They represent a fundamental breakdown in game management, a collective inability to understand what winning hockey looks like when you're protecting rather than chasing. Thursday's collapse followed a depressingly familiar script. After Frederic's early strike, Edmonton played with genuine intensity through the first period and into the second. They were physical, engaged, and for once looked like a team that remembered what playoff hockey felt like. But as the clock ticked toward the 3rd period, you could feel the momentum shifting like sand through an hourglass. The Lightning outshot the Oilers 14-4 in the final 20 minutes of regulation. 14-4. That's not a team protecting a lead. That's a team hanging on for dear life, hoping their goaltender can perform miracles while they retreat into a defensive shell that inevitably cracks under sustained pressure. When Paul finally beat Pickard with under 3 minutes remaining, it felt less like a shocking development and more like the inevitable conclusion to a story we've all read too many times this season. The overtime period merely confirmed what everyone already knew. After Vasilevsky denied Roslovic's early chance, Tampa Bay caught Edmonton on the counterattack, and Gensel finished what Paul had started. Another point in the standings, sure, but another 2 points left on the table. Another moral victory that counts for absolutely nothing in the win column. The rare glimpse of genuine grit if there's a silver lining to be found in Thursday's defeat. And you have to squint pretty hard to see it. It came in the form of old-fashioned hockey toughness. Darnell Nurse, who has endured more criticism than perhaps any Oiler not named Skinner this season, showed genuine leadership when he challenged Curtis Douglas, all 6'7" of him, after the Lightning forward delivered a questionable hit on Jake Wallman. This was only the third fight involving an Oilers player all season, a statistic that speaks volumes about a team often accused of being too soft, too passive, too willing to accept physical punishment without response. Nurse took 2 minutes for instigating, but his teammates responded by killing off the subsequent Tampa Bay power play with renewed energy and purpose. These moments matter more than the box score suggests. In a season where the Oilers have looked disinterested and disconnected for long stretches, Nurse's willingness to stand up for a teammate, to literally fight someone significantly larger, sends a message about accountability and collective responsibility. It's the kind of gesture that can galvanize a locker room, the type of leadership that reminds everyone that some things matter more than individual statistics. The question is whether that spirit can translate into the kind of sustained, 60-minute effort that actually produces victories. Fighting is admirable, but it doesn't address the systematic issues that plague this roster. You can't punch your way out of a third-period collapse or a broken defensive structure. Nurse's courage was commendable, but it ultimately couldn't prevent the same old story from unfolding in the game's final minutes. Pickard's excellence deserves better. Let's talk about Calvin Pickard, because the veteran backup deserves far more than a footnote in another Oilers loss. After watching Skinner struggle mightily in Washington, surrendering 7 goals on 21 shots in a 7-4 defeat, Pickard entered Thursday's game knowing he needed to be nearly perfect to give his team a chance. And for nearly 60 minutes, he was exactly that. 33 saves on 35 shots. Pickard stopped everything the Lightning threw at him through 2 periods and most of the third, making several spectacular stops that kept Edmonton's slim lead intact. He faced a barrage of 14 shots in the third period alone, turning aside 13 of them while his teammates seemed content to simply survive rather than attack. The goal he surrendered to Paul was a bullet, the kind of shot that beats most goaltenders in the league. There was nothing Pickard could have done differently. And in overtime, after making the initial save on Gensel's attempt, he had no chance on the rebound that ended the game. This was not a loss that can be pinned on goaltending. This was a loss that happened despite outstanding goaltending. Which raises the fascinating question heading into Saturday's rematch with the Florida Panthers in Sunrise. Who starts in net? Conventional wisdom suggests you ride the hot hand, and Pickard is unquestionably the hotter goaltender right now. But Skinner is the nominal number 1, the guy who carried this team through long stretches of last season's playoff run. Does head coach Kris Knoblauch give Pickard another start, rewarding his performance and potentially giving Skinner more time to reset mentally? Or does he revert to his presumed starter, hoping that Wednesday's disaster was an aberration rather than a trend? There's no easy answer, but the decision will tell us a lot about how Knoblauch views his team's current state. If he goes back to Skinner, it suggests faith in his established hierarchy and a belief that his number 1 can bounce back quickly. If he sticks with Pickard, it acknowledges that merit matters more than reputation and that the Oilers need to ride whoever gives them the best chance to win right now. Either way, the goaltending isn't the problem. It's everything happening in front of the goaltender that needs urgent attention. The road ahead, when does the pattern break? Saturday's game against Florida carries enormous symbolic weight. These are the 2 teams that battled through 7 grueling games last June for the Stanley Cup, with the Panthers ultimately prevailing. It's a chance for Edmonton to measure themselves against the standard they're supposedly chasing, to see how far they've fallen, or how close they remain, to championship-caliber hockey. But symbolism doesn't win hockey games. Execution does. Discipline does. The ability to play a complete 60 minutes without surrendering momentum does. And right now, the Oilers have demonstrated precious little of any of those qualities. The frustrating reality is that this team has shown flashes of what they're capable of, Thursday's first period was excellent. Nurse's physicality was exactly what this roster needs more of. Pickard's goaltending was elite. But flashes don't win Stanley Cups, consistency does. And consistency is the one thing Edmonton simply cannot find. They're now 9-9-5 through 23 games, a mediocre record that flatters them given how many points they've salvaged in overtime and shootout losses. They're tied with San Jose, the Sharks for crying out loud, in the Pacific Division standings. This is a franchise with legitimate championship aspirations, and they're currently battling for playoff positioning with one of the league's rebuilding teams. Something has to change, and it has to change soon. Whether that's a lineup shakeup, a coaching adjustment, or simply a collective decision to play with the urgency their situation demands, the status quo is unsustainable. You can't keep squandering leads and expect to make the playoffs, let alone compete for championship. The Oilers have now lost 7 consecutive games in which they held a lead in the second or third period. 7. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern, a systematic failure that suggests deeper issues than simple execution. It's a team that doesn't know how to win when winning is hardest, that retreats into a defensive posture instead of maintaining the aggressive mindset that built the lead in the first place. The bottom line Thursday's overtime loss to Tampa Bay was simultaneously encouraging and devastating, a perfect encapsulation of the Oilers season. They did many things right, scored early, played with physicality, got outstanding goaltending, and yet they still found a way to lose, surrendering a late goal and then failing to capitalize in overtime before Gensel ended their misery. At some point, moral victories stop meaning anything. At some point, playing well for 45 minutes becomes irrelevant if you can't finish the job. The Oilers are rapidly approaching that point if they haven't already passed it. They're running out of time to figure out their identity, to decide whether they're contenders or pretenders, to prove that last season's run to the finals was the beginning of something rather than the peak. Saturday in Florida will provide another test, another opportunity, another chance to show they've learned from their mistakes. But talk is cheap, and at this point, even strong performances that end in defeat feel hollow. The Oilers need wins. Plural, consecutive, convincing wins that demonstrate they've turned a corner. Until that happens, we're left with the same question that opened this report. When does almost stop hurting? For Oilers fans, the answer is simple and brutal. It stops hurting when it finally becomes enough. What did you think of the Oilers' latest heartbreaker? Can they turn this season around? Or are we watching a team that's fundamentally broken? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button if you want more brutally honest analysis of this team's struggles. See you Saturday for the Florida rematch.